Welcome to Elevated, a place where the mystical meets the everyday. I am Dawn, a stay-at-home mom to a wild and spirited boy, and a guide in the realms of Reiki, Akashic Records, natural healing, and soulful living. Here, we'll talk energy, intuition, spirituality, but also the realness of motherhood, wellness, and creating balance in the chaos of it all. So grab your tea, take a deep breath, and join me as we explore healing, alignment, and the beauty of both the magical and the messy. Welcome to Elevated. Welcome to Elevated. I am Dawn. I am your host. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing fabulous. I have a bit of a cold. You might be able to tell just when I am talking. I have been stuffed up now for probably 2 weeks, I'm going to say. My little guy, I think it's been 3 weeks that he was sick, and he actually ended up with an ear infection over the weekend, his first one ever. Apparently, because he had a cold and then it kind of went away for a couple of days and then it came back, then that's sort of what caused his ear infection. So he woke up the one morning, he's like, "Mom, I have a headache." And I was like, "Pardon?" He's like, "I have a headache." I went to cuddle him and I was like, "Does it hurt here?" And I went by his ear and he's like, "Yeah, there." And I was like, "Oh," I'm like, "Does your ear hurt?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." So I knew that we were going to have to go to the doctor, and that was on Saturday. So we did. We found a really good walk-in clinic, got him in, got him some medicine. I typically never do over-the-counter medicines for him, but it's an ear infection and they are painful. I just wanted it gone for him. I was tired of this cold for 3 weeks and I didn't want it to come back again. So I said, okay, we'll do 1 shot of antibiotics. He's never had antibiotics. We'll be fine. I, of course, am going to go and get him some really good probiotics for his gut and re-heal his gut that way. We're doing bone broth today. We're making it up. So he'll have bone broth every morning. We will start with even fermented foods to help with his gut as well, to make sure that he gets good probiotics back into his system. So I do apologize for how I sound, but I am excited to do my podcast. Today, I want to talk about spiritual awakenings and the dark night of the soul, but also include neuroscience and the chakra system in there. Today, we are going to walk through what a spiritual awakening actually is, what happens in the brain, why it can feel so destabilizing. We're going to talk about the chakra system as a map, 25 signs you may be having a spiritual awakening, the dark night of the soul, why awakening is increasing now, and how to integrate without losing yourself. If you have felt like you're lost but aware, connected, expanding, sensitive, and overstimulated, that's me all the time. Like your old life just doesn't fit. That's me right now, actually. Like something inside of you is dissolving. You're not broken. You are reorganizing. And today we're going to make sense of it all. A spiritual awakening is not becoming religious. It is not joining a belief system. It is not floating above reality. A spiritual awakening is a shift in consciousness where you begin to see beyond the identity you were conditioned into. It is when you realize, I'm not just my thoughts. I'm not just my trauma. I'm not just my roles. You begin to notice the awareness behind your personality. You begin to observe yourself. That observer and that awareness is the beginning of an awakening. Historically, mystics described awakening as the stripping away of the false self before union with the divine. But you don't need religious language for this. And psychologically, it is called discentering. Spirituality, it is called remembering. Awakening is often triggered. It usually begins when your old identity cracks. So common triggers can be divorce, illness, birth of a child, death of a loved one, burnout, career collapse, trauma healing, spiritual experience, global crisis. So for me, I had a Reiki session and my spiritual awakening was starting with that. I had a birth of my son. that definitely helped as well. I had my brother pass, and I know when my brother passed, I had a spiritual awakening. And the thing with spiritual awakenings is it's not like it's one and done. It can constantly continue because every time you have another awakening, you're up-leveling yourself. I know I'm going through one right now, and I don't know what brought it on, but I am definitely going through a spiritual awakening. Pain destabilizes identity. Identity destabilization opens perception, and perception shifts begin the awakening. Does that sort of make sense? So let's talk about our brain and the neuroscience of a spiritual awakening. We are going to make this simple because sometimes I think when we say neuroscience, it gets so technical and not easy to digest, and I want this to be easy to digest. So your brain has something called a default mode network. So think of it as your inner narrator. It tells you, this is who I am, this is what happened to me, this is what might happen, this is how people see me. It builds your identity story. When people experience deep meditation, trauma, near-death experiences, intense grief, psychedelic experiences, birth experiences, profound awe, default mode network, so the DMN, can quiet down. When it quiets, something wild actually happens. You feel less separate. You feel more connected. You feel more present. You feel timeless. You feel like I am everything. It feels mystical. But what happened biologically is the part of your brain that constantly reinforces me softened. So let's just take, for instance, a new mom. And I'm just thinking of this because my daughter-in-law, I saw her on the weekend and she was 10 days postpartum. And you can just see how she's had to slow down with her son. Before, she was always go, go, go. Her and my bonus son, they were always gone, always doing stuff, always busy. And now she's expected to slow down. Her son is slowing her down, and kids do that. Becoming a mom is that slow point. When you're breastfeeding, it can take half an hour, 45 minutes. So you have 45 minutes, we'll say, where you're not doing anything. You're basically sitting there holding your child while they're feeding, and you have time to slow down. Your mind has time to slow down. Your mind has time to be present. You have time to be present. So that's why they say giving birth is a spiritual awakening, or becoming a mom is a spiritual awakening. So why awakenings can feel scary? Your brain also has a part called the amygdala. It scans for danger. When your identity starts shifting, the amygdala says, hey, something's changing. Is this safe? And it can trigger anxiety, panic, hypervigilance, sleep disruption. Your brain doesn't like losing certainty, even if certainty is limiting. We run so much on an unconscious level that we don't even realize what we're really doing. The whole purpose of the brain and the amygdala is to keep us safe. That's what's happening, right? So we've seen this situation, we've maybe been a part of a situation and we reacted a certain way, things happened and we were safe. So now every time that comes up, we kind of do the same thing so that we are safe. That's what our brain is telling us unconsciously. That's what our body's telling us unconsciously. Like, you were safe when you did this, right? So let's take, for example, a child that is crying and they have a parent that's yelling at them for crying. Well, the child knows that you're not safe when you're being yelled at. So if they start to cry, but then they stop crying really quick and they don't get yelled at, then what are they really learning is that, hey, I can't have that emotion. If I just stay quiet, then I'm not going to get yelled at and I'm going to be safe. And so they built that emotional response of not feeling safe to let out the emotions that they may be having. So they harbor them and they keep them in because that's how they've been taught to be safe. But at the end of the day, it's not what's good for you. It's not what's going to keep you healthy the longest. Like, you're going to cause disease in your body because of that. You're going to not be able to emotionally handle anybody else's emotions. So if you become a parent then and your kid starts crying, you're not going to know how to handle those emotions. And then you're going to react probably by yelling because your body is scared and fearful because you don't know how to act in that situation, right? So you see kind of how the cycle happens. So when you're having an awakening, now all of a sudden your body is realizing, hey, this, we're just going to, for lack of better words, say trauma response isn't going to help you anymore. You need to work through it. You need to sit with it. You need to handle this. And then you as the person, you're like, okay, but this is really scary. Like, it's really scary for me to sit here and listen to someone else crying or to have someone else's emotions come at me. Like, I don't even know how to deal with my own emotion. How can I deal with someone else's emotion? And it's not like you're having this conversation with yourself, but subconsciously, this is all going on. So neuroplasticity basically is rewiring your brain. So your brain can rewire itself. When you question beliefs, you are awakening old pathways, right? So when you meditate, when you journal, when you heal trauma, when you set boundaries, when you build new ones, which this takes time, it just doesn't happen overnight. And then in between, you can feel very lost when all this is going on. So as you're journaling and you're understanding this and realizing this, or going back to the example of being emotionally regulated. So as your kid is crying and you're trying to work through this and you realize that your response isn't the right response and you have to sit with your kid crying, it can be very scary for you. You can feel lost. You can feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know any of this. And what's happening is that lost feeling is space between the old wiring in your brain and then the new wiring in your brain. And you're not failing, because it does feel like you're failing. Like, it just feels like nothing's going and you're like, this doesn't make sense. And I don't know if I'm ever getting this. Like, you feel like you're failing, but you're actually rewiring your brain at that time. Then we have to look at dopamine as well when we're looking into spiritual awakening. So dopamine is not just pleasure. It is motivation. So the old dopamine sources, such as status, validation, achievement, hustle, during the awakening, these may stop feeling good. So you're starting to feel empty. Like, all of a sudden, your status isn't going to be something that's important to you, or having people validate you just isn't going to feel that important to you, or having met that achievement. So say, you were working really hard for something in your career. You're no longer fitting in with your career. Like, you're going through a spiritual awakening with that. You end up getting that achievement that you wanted, that better job, the promotion, whatever it might be, but you get it and you don't feel excited about it. Like, it's just not the feeling that you thought that you were going to have. It was kind of like bland, empty sort of feeling, right? That is where your old dopamine sources all of a sudden aren't working for what your new spiritual awakening is bringing you into. But your brain is searching for more of a deeper meaning pathways. So it can mean all of a sudden you're craving nature, you're craving silence, you're craving depth, you're craving a spiritual study, you're craving healing. So what used to bring you all that dopamine or all that happiness no longer is doing that. And now you're looking at nature and it's bringing you that dopamine rush, or just sitting in silence, being with yourself, journaling, something like that is bringing you that dopamine rush, just healing, going for any sort of healing modality. It could be like Reiki, Akashic Records, bars, spiritual coaching, even if that's something that you're looking into, reflexology, like just whatever you're doing to heal yourself on an emotional, spiritual level. That's what you're looking for. When you're getting your dopamine rush from, nature, silence, spiritual study, the healing, all of that, it's your reward system is actually maturing into your spiritual awakening. You got to look too then with spiritual awakening with the chakras, right? So we have our 7 chakra system as well. So how do the chakras play a part too in your spiritual awakening? The chakra system comes from ancient Indian spiritual traditions connected to Hinduism and later woven into the forms of Buddhism. You can see chakras as energy centers or as psychological themes. It's however you want to see it. And they basically form a map for awakening. So we're just going to go through each of the chakra and kind of how it plays out in your awakening. So there's the root chakra, and the root chakra is found at your pelvis. So when awakening begins, safety feels unstable. So you may question your job. Again, these are just examples. You may fear financial instability, revisit childhood trauma, feel physically shaky. It's because you're rebuilding your safety from inside out. So our root chakra is your foundation. Like I always think of it as the roots of a tree. That is the foundation of the tree. Doesn't matter how tall the tree gets, how wide the tree gets. If those roots do not go deep enough into the ground to hold that tree up, to keep that tree healthy, full of water and the nutrients that it needs, but also to keep it grounded into the ground, a big windstorm can come up and blow that tree over. You see it more times than not in the forest. Cedar trees for sure, they're uprooted. And these big root systems have literally failed this massive 100-foot tree. I always think of the root chakra. Again, it's at the pelvis. That is where our safety is. That is where our foundation is. You could think of it as a foundation of a home even, right? The basement of a home, the foundation of a home. If you don't have a good foundation, your home isn't stable. Your home could potentially collapse in. Your home could shift and fall. Again, the root chakra, it's our foundation. Okay? The sacral chakra is just up in between your pelvis and your belly button area. It's where the womb is for women. The sacral chakra is your emotion and creativity. Emotions are going to surface when you're working through a spiritual awakening. There's going to be old grief. There's going to be old shame. There's going to be old desires. You may cry easily. You may feel more sensual or creative. Your emotional body is clearing out what is no longer needed in the pre-spiritual awakening, so the old timeline, into the new timeline, okay? Then you're going to move up to the belly button area, which is your solar plexus. And this is your identity. So here your identity is collapsing when you're having a spiritual awakening. And this is where you go from ego and restructuring it into non-ego things. So you're going to start questioning your career, your role. That could be your role in a family, your role in your career, your role in your friends, anything like that. Your power, your confidence. You may start really feeling lost because at this point, your identity is rewiring. So you go from someone who has just given birth, right? So you were not a mother before, boom, now you're a mother. You weren't a father before, now you're a father. And your role, literally, and I don't even want to say overnight, your role in a matter of minutes and seconds instantly changes. Instantly. You are no longer just a husband and a wife. You are no longer just boyfriend, girlfriend. You are just no longer you as a single identity. You now are a mother and your role is shifting. And now you have this other little being or beings, if you're having multiples, to take care of that rely on you. You no longer are the number one importance in your life for some time because this little being is relying on you to feed them, keep them alive, keep them safe. Do you see how that role instantly changes? And it could be the same thing with your career. Again, you were sitting there and you were like, I really want to be the CEO of this company, and then you start working your way up there, and as you're going up, you're just like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't aligning with me. And I mean, when you were down at the very bottom, just starting out, it probably looked very great. It was the big dream. Everyone said to be something, you have to be the CEO of the company. To be the most important, you're the CEO of the company. And it's what you desired at that time frame. But as you're working your way up, you're like, how they do this, it's not really aligning with me. How we have to treat my employees isn't really aligning with me. How I have to give up all of my time for this company and I'm no longer a person and I'm just either a number and I'm giving up everything and constantly there's no work-life balance. there's more work than there is a home life. And as you're moving up the scale and you see this, you're beginning to think, no, this isn't what I want. So you can see how all of a sudden you're feeling lost because you're like, well, for so many years, I thought I wanted this. And you hear that a lot with people who will go into the medical field. They'll go to university. They start off in the medical field. They're 17, 18 when they're starting university. They've always thought that, hey, I want to be this doctor. I want to help people in this specific way. And then as they're going through college and then they start residency, they're like, but I don't agree with the medical system. I don't agree with how this is working. And they start questioning it. And all of a sudden they do like that one, boom, 180 shift. And they're now in the naturopathic world. They're in the holistic healing world. They're doing something completely different in regards to the medical system. They're not giving you antibiotics and medicine. They're giving you in return herbs. And they're saying our body can heal itself, that type of thing. So your identity at that point in time is completely rewiring, and you are feeling lost because, again, you've always had this picture over here of this is what I'm going to be. And now all of a sudden your spiritual awakening is saying, but no, you're actually this, and you're going to move into that. And then there's the heart chakra. So the heart chakra, of course, is right at your heart, and it's expansion. So suddenly you're going to feel empathy for people that you once judged. You're going to feel grief for humanity. If you've always had a bad relationship with your parents, maybe you all of a sudden start forgiving them because you can see where they're coming from. You can see what path they were on and what led them to do what they were doing. Your love it deepens. It deepens for yourself. It deepens for your family. It deepens for your parents. It deepens for your friends. It deepens for your colleagues. It deepens for the stranger on the street sometimes. It really starts deepening. And your nervous system, it begins to start softening. It begins to calm and relax and take it all in and really enjoy this part. And there's the throat chakra, which is truth. And you cannot lie to yourself anymore. You cannot tell yourself those little white lies of like, no, I really want to be a CEO. No, I really want to be a CEO. All of a sudden it's like, no, you don't. You don't want to do that. Or, no, I really, really want to be an oncologist because that's how we're going to cure cancer. Like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to help all those cancer patients, and my cancer patients are going to be good. They're going to no longer have cancer, and I'm going to heal them, and I'm going to keep them alive. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, you're not. You know that chemo is causing cancer. You know that it is not good for your body. Radiation isn't good for your body. But hey, look at this holistic practice that we can do. Look at this that we can do. This has been showing that it's going to help. Something like that. You're going to start setting boundaries. Boundaries with yourself, boundaries with loved ones, boundaries with friends, boundaries with coworkers, all of that. Boundaries are going to be set. So sometimes you're just going to lose friends all of a sudden. You're going through the spiritual awakening, and just how it works is as you're going through the spiritual awakening and your vibration starts rising, the people that no longer are at your vibrational level, because we're all vibration, everything in the whole universe is vibration, right? So as we start rising our vibration, or as you start rising your vibration, then the people that aren't going with you, the people that just weren't at that level, they're just going to slowly drop off. Just things aren't going to align. You're just going to be like, oh, I don't really want to hang out with them, or just quietly things just separate. There's no real reason. You just kind of stop texting one day, or you just kind of stop chit-chatting, or your coworker that you always had coffee with, all of a sudden you're just like, you start being very protective of who you're spending time with, and it just doesn't feel good. So you don't do it. And then truth feels necessary. Like, you just need the truth, right? So whether if you're telling yourself the truth, if people are telling you the truth, you're truth seeking at this point in time. Then there's the third eye. So the third eye is right here on your forehead, and it's perception, but everyone's life is perception. How an event happened, you will perceive it one way, the next person will perceive it the other way, and the third party will perceive it a different way. Like, it's all going to be perceived differently. Even if you're all at the exact same event and the exact same situation happened, it's all perceived differently just based on our own life experiences and what we have personally lived before and perceived before. But you're going to start noticing synchronicity. So what's a synchronicity? We've kind of been over this before, but 111, 222, 333, like repeating numbers, obviously. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Feathers are synchronicities. If you're thinking something and it happens, that's a synchronicity. You want to go and buy a new vehicle, and all of a sudden you're constantly seeing that new vehicle. But you'll start seeing a lot of synchronicities. And synchronicities, like I said, could be feathers, numbers. You think of somebody, so you're like, oh, hey, is Joan going to call me? And then boom, Joan calls you. You're thinking, oh, I should text my mom something. And then she texts you, that type of thing. That's all synchronicities lining up. And your brain is noticing patterns more clearly. Now, sometimes you don't see the synchronicities as 1111, 2222, or you see it and you don't realize that there are a synchronicity, that things are changing. Angel numbers are huge. They can definitely tell you that things are changing. Like 555 means that you're transforming, you're on a new path, right? Seeing a butterfly, if you see tons of butterflies, again, that's transformation. Dragonflies, transformation, like all that kind of stuff. Those would all be synchronicities. But again, sometimes we just see them and don't really focus on them or think about them, but they're there all the time. So that's the third eye. So the last one is our crown. So our crown is just above our head. It's not on our head, it's above our head. The crown is unity. So it's like movements of oneness, timelessness, peace. Our default mode network is starting to quiet. So things are changing for you. Things aren't the same. And you're more at peace. You're more calm. You're more relaxed, I guess you can say. Some signs of a spiritual awakening is you suddenly question everything that you once believed. Basically, you wake up one day and you realize you don't fully believe what you've been taught, like say about religion or success or relationships or even who you may be. So you might feel a little bit confused, maybe a little bit scared, but also curious at the same time. And this is your consciousness is expanding. You're moving from inherited beliefs to a direct experience. What's happening with your brain is your brain has neural pathways, basically like roads, and they're built from repetition, right? So when you start questioning your beliefs, you're literally weakening the old brain roads and you're building new ones. And that does feel uncomfortable because your brain likes the familiarity, right? We know this. We've already talked about this. But this stage often leads to studying maybe like philosophy, mysticism, psychology, different spiritual paths as well. The next one is major life events. They'll break you open. So it could be like divorce, death, illness, financial collapse, betrayal, things like that. And what it's going to feel like is your world is falling apart. You feel raw and you feel exposed. Like think about it. If you were going through maybe, I'll say death because I've lost my brother, and then a couple of years later, I lost my Reiki master, and it's things that I've had to work with. But literally, I remember the day that my brother passed away, and I did not believe it. I remember we came home, we sat on the couch, we fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up and I was like, this has to be a dream. Like, this is not my reality. Like, no, my brother is to be here for my whole rest of my life. But the spiritual layer of that is the ego structure starts cracking. So the deeper self can actually emerge is really what's going on. So your whole world feels like it's falling apart. Like you're just like, how do I do life without this person? How do I do this? And slowly, day by day, your ego structure starts to say, you can do this. It's okay. And I mean, it's not, the next day is not easy. Like, I mean, you go through a complete collapse, right? Like it is. It's like anxiety when you're going out and just all of that. But slowly and surely, there's a deeper self of you is coming through that. Like that passing allowed you to find that deeper part of yourself. And the neuroscience based on that is like trauma, it activates the amygdala. But after a crisis, the brain can actually rewire itself. And this is called post-traumatic growth. Your identity literally reorganizes. And what comes of this is many people say that the worst thing that has ever happened to them is also the best thing that's ever happened to them. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard, someone got divorced or they financially collapsed or someone completely betrayed them or, even illness or death, right? They're like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. But it's also the best because look at all this growth that I've done. Look at how I'm not the same person. It could be 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, but you're not that same person. And I'll say that My brother passing, I miss him every single day. Like, do not get me wrong. I miss my brother every single day, and I would do anything to have him here. And there has been times where I've been like, I wish I could have learned this with you alive. I wish I didn't have to lose you to become this person. But I also know that losing him has made me this person. It sucks 100%. I'd rather he be here, but I don't want to say it's like the best thing, but he's definitely transformed me. His passing has transformed me, right? You feel deeply dissatisfied with normal life. You have the job, you have the house, you have the routine, and yet something just feels super, super empty. So the spiritual side of this is the soul is no longer fulfilled by surface identity. And your brain, the dopamine, right, which is the reward chemical, no longer spikes from the same achievements. Like, it's just like, yeah, great, you have the job, you have the house, yeah, it's your routine, I'm bored, I need something new, right? So your brain is craving meaning over the stimulation all of a sudden. What can change from this is like career changes, simplifying life, seeking your purpose. I know for me, doing this podcast, that's a new dopamine rush for me. Number 4, highlighted sensitivity to energy and environment. So crowds overwhelm you, noise feels sharper, you feel other people's emotions. That's me. The spiritual side of this is your awareness is increasing, and the veil between self and others feels thinner. So you're actually feeling their energy a lot more. And what the brain is doing is the nervous system is more active. The empathy region of your brain, which is the insula, becomes more sensitive. I feel so bad for my little son because literally his noise when he's like excited and, you know, kind of running in the house, or like he's 4, like he's excited all the time. And I'm like, oh God, can we lower that? Do we have to be so like do we have to, you know? And it's so hard for me because it literally is so much for my sensitivity. Like I'm so heightened. Sometimes I do put in my loops just so I don't hear that spike. But basically the evolution of this is you're learning boundaries. So basically how to overcome this is learning the boundaries, and that becomes essential. So for me, again, loops, that's a boundary, because at some point too, I can't just keep telling him to be quiet or to lower his level. I mean, he's not even really that loud. He's just excited. And I don't ever want him to feel like he can't be excited in this world, right? So that's something I have to work on. So my loops, earplugs are huge for me. Number 5, synchronicities increase. You think about someone and they text or call. You see repeating numbers constantly. See if you ask a question, you're getting the answer. It could be simple as, should I do this? And then, you see a feather in a really weird spot or something like that. Like that would be a yes, you should. Sometimes if you ask for signs like, hey, show me a pink balloon if I'm supposed to do this, and then it comes up, that type of thing would still be a synchronicity. It's still a sign, but it's still a synchronicity as well. Spiritual layer with that is you feel guided or connected to a greater intelligence. And the way that we can explain it through your brain is your brain's pattern recognition system is heightened. You're noticing connections that you once ignored. Synchronicities are always around us all the time. We have synchronicities all the time. We start noticing them when we start becoming awake because we're vibrating at that level. We can see it. Our brain is noticing them, like they just are. But the synchronicities have always been there. And what happens is because we start seeing these synchronicities more, our trust in universe, source, whatever you want to call it, starts deepening. There is an emotional purge. That is number 6. So old memories surface, tears come unexpectedly. And what it is the stored trauma is actually clearing out. And what happens in the brain is the hippocampus, so the memory center, it integrates old emotional memories into present awareness so they no longer control us unconsciously. It doesn't control us anymore. 9.9% of what we do, maybe not that much, but even say like 90% of the day, it's unconscious. You go take a shower. Do you really think about, I should go get the shampoo and hit the plunger to get the shampoo on my hand and rub my hands together and put it? No, we just subconsciously do it. We're so exhausted in the morning that unconsciously you're just doing it. a habit that's been formed. And that's all of a sudden the emotional purging. It's just all this unconscious memories that we have, because we don't actually remember all of our memories all the time. Like at certain ages, we start dropping off some memories. And so those early childhood memories and all that, they start coming up. And we're like, oh wow. And you start purging them. When I first went through my spiritual awakening, started journaling. And at one point I was like, I gotta quit journaling, because it seems like every morning I'm just like bawling my eyes out. But the stuff that I was bringing up and purging and releasing and getting rid of to make room for new was huge. So of course, when you start purging, like with anything, you feel lighter after. After you've purged it, yeah, there might be a period where you're a little bit down, you're a little bit sad, but then, give it like 10, 15 minutes, you're like, wow, I feel good. I feel better. I feel more energetic. I feel lighter, that type of thing. Number 7 is loss of identity. You don't recognize who you are anymore. Why is that happening? Because your ego is actually dissolving. We're so conditioned to live in our ego that when you're going through a spiritual awakening, you're no longer about your ego. It's physically dissolving. So you don't know this person anymore. You got to relearn this person. And what the brain is experiencing is the default mode network. So that me story center of the brain, it becomes quieter during the deep reflection and meditation. Like it's just becoming quieter. Whether if you're meditating or if you're just driving all of a sudden without music on and you're just thinking about things, that's deep reflection. But your me story becomes quieter and you can see things differently. You can see things from other points of views and stuff like that. And this is more of an authentic identity. Number 8 is a deep connection to nature. So trees feel alive. You feel held by the earth. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I love shoveling the snow. I'm so connected when I'm shoveling the snow, when the snow's hitting my face. It's just such a connection to the earth. When I walk through the trees in a forest, that is life. And it is one thing that I long for so much, is to be able to live close to a forest, just to be able to have that connection. And what the spiritual part of it is unity consciousness. So it's realizing that we're not just us, like we're not just a silo and nature's a silo. We're connected together. The trees have energy and I'm connected to their energy and they're connected to my energy. The grass has energy and I'm connected to its energy and it's connected to my energy, same as Mother Earth. And what the brain is saying is that time in nature lowers cortisol and increases serotonin. So your nervous system actually shifts into safety the more that you spend time in nature. It's going to the beach, if you can do that, grounding yourself, hugging a tree. Have you ever tried that? I really, really want to do that. I think if I did that for 30 days and hugged a tree for like a minute per day, what would be the massive significance of that? Like what would shift? I really, really do want to try that. Number 9 is a sudden desire to heal your body. So you want to eat differently. You want to move differently. You want to detox emotionally. So the spiritual side of it is there's an alignment between the spirit and your body or your vessel. The spirit needs you to do these things. It needs you to really take care of your body. It needs you to eat healthy, to keep your body, the physical body, healthy, so that the spirit, which is our soul, has the time that it needs to complete the tasks that it is supposed to be completing. So it's going to want you to move, like just like exercise, go for a walk, dance, do Asian Pilates, like things like that. Detox emotionally. Well, that would be, crying, somatic movements. That's going to help you as well doing that kind of stuff. So what happens in the brain is there's an awareness that increases, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the decision center. And if you have toddlers, or children, you understand that this doesn't really come into play until they're about 26-ish. It overrides all of the old habits. This is why all of a sudden you see someone that like never used to work out or eat really healthy or anything like that. All of a sudden, boom, it's like they're eating differently, they're moving, they're working out. And all of that is getting to physically like detox the emotions in ways that they don't even realize that it's happening. Number 10 is intuitive downloads. So you suddenly know things. Maybe you see things, maybe you hear things, maybe you just know things. It's your higher consciousness communicating with you. And what's happening with the brain is your subconscious has been processing data. When it integrates, insight appears suddenly, like a light bulb. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, yeah. So I know for myself, I know things. I sometimes hear things, but sometimes I get a flash of something. There's one incident that comes to mind. We were out, this was years ago. Oh my gosh, years ago. We were out at a friend's birthday, and there's a whole bunch of friends around, and there's a whole bunch of kids around, and this one kid is playing on the dirt pile, and I'm just sitting there kind of like in my own little world at this point in time, and I'm watching all these kids, and out of nowhere I focused in on this one kid, and a flash came about, and it said cancer. Just boom, cancer. Not that he had cancer at the time, but just, and that's what was told to me. It was like, cancer, not now, later on in life. And I was like, whoa. Never told our parents, because how do you say, hey, I had this random thing, like, I don't know when it's going to be. But so that came about. Just like I said, just all of a sudden knows things, right? There'd be times when you hear a story about someone, and you know the answer to that story. That is literally your intuitive downloads coming in. Then there's the dark night of the soul. It feels like depression without a clear reason. So emptiness, loss of spiritual comfort, feeling abandoned by like God or source or creator, whoever you believe in. And the reason why this is happening on a spiritual level is everything false is being stripped away from you. And in your brain, so logically, during this intense transformation, your dopamine actually drops. So your old identity circuits are weakening, and it feels like groundlessness. Like there's just like almost like a depression. You're just moping around kind of. You're just not the same person that you used to be. Maybe, again, like the same things aren't going to interest you, right? So it is basically like a depression at that point. But what's important is that this is not the same as like a clinical depression, right? Like it's not, you don't need to go on antidepressants for this or anything like that. Though they can overlap. But basically it's not the same. You still need support. Like if you can have a bit of a spiritual community to help you with this. If you're going through this and, it maybe doesn't even have to be spiritual. Say grief is what caused you to start your spiritual awakening. Maybe there's a grief counseling group that you're going to, and then that support is going to be what's critical for you. Or maybe it's divorce and you can find other divorcees and you have that support group, right? Like whatever it is that kind of brought it on, hopefully you can find a support group that can help you. And just through that, you're going to find the right people that are going to be aligned with you to help you through this sort of dark night of the soul. It's not really something that you're meant to do alone, although sometimes we do end up doing it alone. And then what's going to happen is after you surrender to this and after all of that, you find your groups and you go through all of this, and dark night of the soul is not an easy thing at all. But basically, clarity is going to return, but it's just going to be softer and it's going to be humbler. You're going to be softer. You're going to be humbler. Like it's just a massive stripping away of who you once were into who you are becoming. Number 12, time feels differently. So days blur, moments feel eternal. And what's happening is in your brain, the time and space perception that we have in our brain, it shifts during this deep state of awareness. So things do, like they'll just blur together, or moments may feel like eternal, but maybe they're like just boom, 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 Think about if you've ever had a kid, the first couple of months, like it's all blurry. You're like, what just happened? Or you lost somebody and you have that grief and you're going through that. It's like months go by and literally all the days are blurry. You don't know. You cannot, for a 6-month period, pick out anything special about any of those days, that type of thing. So number 13, old relationships fall away. So you outgrow certain conversations or dynamics or friendship groups or coworkers or family members. Spiritually, what's happening, and we've discussed this too, is that there's a frequency shift. Like we're all vibrational beings. Everything in the universe is vibrational, and we resonate with certain vibrations. Now, when we're going through a spiritual awakening, our frequency, our vibration is heightening. And what's going to happen is the ones that no longer fit in that vibrational frequency, they don't fit. It's like taking a square into a round hole. It's not going to work. It's just not. And so you're feeling that all of a sudden. You're like, oh man, I'm round, they're square. Those edges they're hurting. It just, you can't move me that way. But that's really what's happening. And the psychological part of this is you're no longer tolerant of the misalignment. Like your body's just saying, I don't want to be at that vibrational level. I can't be at that vibrational level anymore. I have to move up to this vibrational level. And it may happen with family members. It may happen with friends. It may happen, like I said, with coworkers. It just may happen with different groups that you're involved in. Those relationships will fall away. Now, usually with family, we tend to be in the same sort of vibration and frequency, but there are times when you just really don't resonate with certain family members and it's not working for you. And that is okay. Number 14, increase compassion. So even for those who have hurt you, you just have this increase in compassion. You can look at what's going on with them. What you're seeing is you begin to see the wounded children inside of the adults. So I always go back to a saying, hurt people, meaning someone that is hurt is going to hurt another person. I don't care, and I'm going to state this, and this may be an unpopular opinion, and that is perfectly fine. I really don't care, but there is not one soul on this earth, in my opinion, that does not have some sort of childhood hurt or wound. And I don't want to call it trauma because I'm so tired of that word. Everything seems to be trauma lately. It is a wound. It is not trauma. It is a wound. I will tell you a story. I went to Body Talk one day and I was just talking with my Body Talk practitioner. And this is just before I was becoming a mom. And one of my biggest fears was not being a good enough mom. And he said to me, he goes, it doesn't matter what you do. He's like, perception is everything. So he goes, what you think is a good mom, your son could think is not a good mom. And he's like, take this for example. I think it was his family. And there was a couple of kids. They were tobogganing down the hill. And the mom would go, wee! So later on in life, the mom and the kids are talking. And they're like, oh, remember when we did this and how great that was? And the other kid's like, no, you scared me shitless. I didn't like that. That's what I mean. The mom thought she was doing the right thing by going, wee, thinking that they're having fun. Meanwhile, the other kid is like, oh my God, we're going to crash. My life is over. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. Perception is everything. So there is going to be childhood wounds no matter what the parent did. There is no such thing as a perfect parent, and there's no such thing as a perfect child. But there is going to be wounds on both sides, and that is perfectly fine. So all of a sudden, you going through a spiritual awakening, you can look at the person, you can be like, oh, I kind of see and understand where you're getting that from. I can kind of see where in your past, even if it wasn't a childhood, but maybe past early adult years or whatever, I can see where that's coming from. And at that point, I can give you grace. Not that, if they've really hurt you, you don't have to forget what they've done, but you can give them grace and you can give them forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't for them. Forgiveness is for you. Why do you want to carry that energy? Why do you want to be held to that? That's very powerless. So you can forgive them. Again, you don't forget how they've hurt you, but you can forgive them and you can have that compassion towards them and you can say, I understand, and give them that grace. So what happens in the brain is the empathy networks, they start to strengthen when we're going through this part of a spiritual awakening. Number 15, you can feel called to serve. So all of a sudden, you have this urge of helping others. It feels more important than your personal gain. Say you were a college student and you were going into a medical field, and all of a sudden you go through a spiritual awakening through college and the medical system. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you know what? I don't really want to be this doctor, but what I want to do is I actually want to help people. And you do that 180 flip. So here you're handing out all of the medication to people, and all of a sudden you're realizing this isn't aligning with you. This isn't really what you want to do. And what you really want to do is you want to get to the root cause, because you know that the medication is just covering up symptoms and the root cause, where you really want to find that root cause. You really want to be like, what is causing this for you? Why is this happening? What is going on in either your physical body, your emotional body, your spiritual body? Like, what is causing that? And you do kind of that flip. And what's happening there is the heart chakra, it's actually awakening. And the neuroscience behind this is that the oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, when you just gave birth, there's like a massive oxytocin that's discharged from baby mom doing skin to skin. They've stated that oxytocin is huge with that because of the fact that it is a bonding hormone. You're bonding. So that increases when you're serving others, that oxytocin. Number 16 is sleep changes. So vivid dreams, waking at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning consistently. And what is happening there is your REM cycles shift during emotional processing. So it doesn't mean like it's always going to happen. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm going through a spiritual awakening and I'm never going to sleep between 3 and 4 o'clock ever again. No. If it is happening, if you are having more vivid dreams, if you tend to all of a sudden be waking between 3 and 4, it could be perimenopause or menopause. I'm just throwing that out there for the women. But it could also be a spiritual awakening. And once you go through that, and once the emotional processing has been dealt with and stuff like that, you'll go back to your normal sleep patterns. Maybe you'll still have very vivid dreams, but you won't be doing that waking type of thing. And it really is because the REM cycles are shifting during that time frame. Number 17, you experience physical sensations during meditation. So like maybe there's a pressure in your forehead, there's heat in your chest, there's a tingling spine. That'll be like the kundalini coming up. And what's happening with the chakra system is the third eye, the heart, the kundalini energy, it's all being activated. So if you feel tingling anywhere, it's just your chakra system working. What's happening is the parasympathetic activation plus an increase in body awareness. So that's why you're feeling those physical sensations during a meditation. And it probably would happen more during the meditation simply because the spiritual awakening, but your body's quiet. You're actually taking the time to calm the mind and be in the present moment so you can actually feel it. It may happen throughout the day, just that you're so busy and you're not paying attention to it. So when your mind is quiet, you can finally pay attention to it. Number 18 is fear of going crazy. Sometimes this happens, not all the time, but sometimes. And you wonder if something is actually wrong with you. So what's important to remember is that a spiritual awakening destabilizes your identity, but it's grounding practices that is going to keep you safe. So all of a sudden you're going through and you don't know who you are. You weren't the same person you were a couple weeks ago, and all this stuff is going on and you're like, am I crazy? Like, is this really happening? Is this reality? Like that kind of thing starts happening, right? So I don't know if it's like a fear of going crazy or just feel like you're going crazy. Number 19 is there's a loss of interest in gossip and drama. Like you just don't care anymore. You just feel tired of the shallow conversations. You're like, I don't care what Bobby Jean is doing over there. I don't care that Randy over there and his wife are going through that hard time. Like you don't care about the gossip or the drama. All of a sudden you're like, are we in high school again? Like, are we going through, like, really? There's that kind of drama. And you're just like, I don't want it. Like, I don't need this kind of stuff. And you just back away from the gossip and the drama. Number 20 is the desire for solitude. Not isolation, not in that regards, but you just want a sacred space. You just want your time. You just don't maybe want to engage as much with the outside world and trying to learn again who you are and sense who you are, and you just want some time alone to be able to do it. Doesn't mean that you're always going to be that way. Doesn't mean that you're always going to want to crave solitude, but there's going to be a time frame where solitude is more important and you put it to the forefront versus going out. And then things will flip and then you'll be like, yeah, okay, I can go out again. That's no big deal, right? And then you'll still have the odd time of solitude. Maybe it's like once a week, once a month type of thing, but it's not as much as it is when you're physically going through the spiritual awakening. Number 21 is strong boundaries emerge. You will say no without guilt. No, I'm not going. Nope. Someone will be like, hey, do you want to come out for supper tonight? And be like, no, thank you. I'm good. I'll be like, what? Just because you didn't feel like going out, that, and that's okay. Yeah, someone will want you to do something for them and you'll be like, no, I'm not doing it. And you're not going to feel guilty for doing that. A friend is like, hey, I'm moving for the 20th time this year. Do you want to help? You're like, no, man, I've helped the other 19. I'm good this round. I'm done. If you can't figure your stuff out, I'm sorry, but I'm done. Like there's just going to be like that kind of just no. And you just leave it at no. No excuses, no guilt with it, just no. Number 22 is increased creativity. Writing, music, podcasting, dancing maybe, like things like that. It's just going to flow out of you. Just whatever you're creative for, it's going to come out. There's just going to be this form of creativity. Some people, they do welding and they're able to make very beautiful artwork through welding and different pieces of metal and stuff like that. Some people are very beautiful at writing and they can write really beautiful poems, or they can write novels or things like that. Some people paint. That's just so freeing for them, and it's a creativity that they have. And maybe they're not like amazingly great at it, but it brings them the comfort and it brings them the joy in that. And what's happening in the brain at that time is the default mode network and the creative network, they sync more fluidly at that point in time. So things are just working, you know. Dance is huge for creativity as well. Coloring, that's very creative for me. And then my podcast, that's definitely how I get my creativity out. Creating my website was getting my creativity out. Because of my solar gift, creativity for me would be in the kitchen, baking, doing that kind of stuff, cooking. That's creativity for me. And my husband's like, don't make it so difficult. And I'm like, no, this is fun for me. Like, I like this. Another one for me is organization. Literally organizing my space and making it functional and useful. That is creativity for me. So creativity isn't just the arts part of it either, okay? It could be different things as well. Number 23, you see your shadow clearly. So you can see jealousy, anger, ego patterns. You see it all. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I was jealous. Why was I jealous? Why was I angry in that situation? Why do I have an ego right now? And instead of denying them, you witness them, you notice them, you get curious about it. You're like, hey, what's going on, jealousy? Why are we here? What are you jealous about? You kind of start asking those questions to get that deeper inner knowing of why is this happening? That's a spiritual awakening. Number 24 is profound gratitude for ordinary things. Like the sunlight feels marvelous. Going to the beach and walking on sand and dipping your feet into the water is marvelous to you. For me, like I said, like shoveling the snow. It's just walking in the trees in a forest is marvelous to me. Number one thing that I think is the most marvelous thing in the world and is so freaking beautiful and I have so much gratitude for. It's kind of like two parts in one. Being in the backcountry, snowmobiling, okay? You're going up. The snow is everywhere. I'm obsessed with snow. The snow is everywhere. It's in the trees. Like it's just, the trees are just caked with the snow. You know, like it's like the white Christmas tree flocked trees. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like these things are just flocked. A little bit of greenery coming out, but mostly flocked, okay? And you got the beautiful blue sky. And you look out and you see the cloud. You're above the cloud. You literally drove through the cloud. And you're above the cloud and you have the sun. And it's bright and it's warm and there's just snow everywhere and the trees are covered. That, my God, that is literally the most beautiful thing that I can be grateful for. Like I'm just picturing it right now. You have no idea. Unless you've ever like experienced that and that's your jam, you probably have no idea. But something like that simple can make you so grateful. And we park our snowmobiles on the mountaintop and I sit there and always take pictures, of course. I just sit there and I'm so grateful for that moment. And I'm so grateful to be able to be in the backcountry and to be able to get to see that. And I think the words that always come out of my mouth at that point in time is there is literally a few handful of people that get to experience this. Oh, it's so majestically beautiful. And I'm so grateful to be one of those few handfuls of people that get to experience that. Number 25 is a quiet inner knowing replaces seeking. So you stop chasing answers. You just rest in being present. You begin resting in the presence. Like you just know everything's going to work out. Things are going to be okay. It's just this calm, this peace that kind of comes over you. So those are the 25 signs that you're going through a spiritual awakening. I did want to dip back into the dark night of the soul a little bit and explain it because sometimes that can be very, very scary. It sounds scary, but yet it's actually very beautiful and very profound. So it is a collapse phase. So it feels like there's emptiness, meaninglessness, anxiety, depression, isolation, a loss of pleasure. And when you hear that, I could see where you're like, that's a lot. That's a lot to be dealing with. And it comes in phases, definitely. And if you go through a dark night of the soul, like I said, it is very profound and it is very transformational. It is very beautiful once you're out of it. When you're in it, it's not very beautiful. But when you're out of it, it's very beautiful and you can look back and reflect on it. But how it fits into an awakening is the awakening starts to crack the ego, right? So as we went through kind of the list, you saw how it's literally our ego self, our limited self, our self where we've been told what we're going to be. It starts to crack. It's just like, oh, wow, I don't have to be this. I'm not this person. I thought I was this, but I'm not, and I could be this. And it's cracking who we thought we were. On the dark night, it takes that and it just starts dissolving that, right? So the awakening cracks the ego. On the dark night, it's dissolving it. It's just dissolving all, if you want a picture of it, maybe a jawbreaker with like gum inside. Your ego is the hard part of the jawbreaker and you're the gum inside. And what's happening is all of a sudden the awakening is cracking all of that hard stuff around the jawbreaker. And then the dark night dissolving the jawbreaker slowly and surely, and it gets into the cracks and it helps to dissolve it even quicker and faster. And eventually what you're going to be left with is just the gum inside, which is you, your essence, your authentic self. The dark night of the soul is a purging phase, right? Like you're purging that off. You're getting rid of that jawbreaker part. You're saying, no, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you to protect me anymore. I'm okay to be on my own. It's your old dopamine system. It's fading. You don't need it anymore. Your old identity starts to collapse. Like this is all what the jawbreaker is. It's dopamine and ego and your old identities, and the new ones, they're not fully formed yet. Like they're in there. They're in the gum. Like they're there. And you feel suspended at this point. You feel like, I don't know. I'm so lost. It's just a I don't know phase, I guess you could say. And you may start thinking like, I've lost myself. Like, who am I? I don't even recognize this person. There is something that is deeper that is forming in the authentic you. You don't know it yet. And so you are lost. And the key difference between like the clinical depression and the dark night of the soul depression is in the dark night, there's often awareness. There's an observing the pain. So you're aware of the pain, you're observing it, you're saying, okay, yeah, I can see where that pain's coming from, or I can see in my childhood why I would have that limiting belief in my adulthood because of what happened in my childhood type of thing, right? You feel lost, but yet you're watching yourself feel lost. Like you know you're lost when you're observing the dark night of the soul, the awareness. And that's what's happening when the awareness and observing is happening. And that watcher is the consciousness expanding. It's like your consciousness saying, okay, I see that. I see that I'm lost. I understand that I'm lost, but I can see why I'm lost type of thing. There is a grounding truth to this. If you are struggling with a deep night of the soul, therapy and medical support do matter. No matter what, it is depression at the end of the day. And it does matter. If you need it, go get it. Help yourself, please. Awakenings and mental health care, they do coexist. They really, really do. Maybe a lot of people that are depressed are going through awakening and they don't realize it, and they're put on antidepressants, and then they're kind of like left on antidepressants and they don't need it. Maybe they just need it for a short time frame because they're literally changing who they were. And you got to think about it. If you are going through a massive traumatic response awakening, so say it was, a divorce that happened, and I know nothing of divorce. I've never been divorced. So say it was a divorce that happened and it was very traumatic. You were everything. You were so-and-so's wife or husband, whatever the case might be. And you were noted as that, and your identity was part of that, and you did everything, and you were almost each other's best friends. And obviously divorce, if you're best friends, who knows, maybe came out of nowhere. Whatever the situation might be. And you all of a sudden weren't any of that, and you had to become someone different. Oh my gosh, of course you're going to have a hard time picturing this new person and this new identity. And that might be when you're like, I do need some help. Maybe it's not physically antidepressants, but maybe it is, I need therapy at this current time, and I need to talk to somebody about this. We have heard so much about spiritual awakenings in the last little bit. It's no longer a taboo subject. People are talking about it all the time. And the reason for that is because there's a global instability that's happening. The pandemic trauma that happened, definitely with that. That's part of one. Internet exposure, right? So a lot of all of this is due to the internet. We're being exposed. You got your shorts on YouTube, you got your TikTok reels, you got your stories on Facebook and on Instagram, and things can get said really quickly and out there. and people can pick up on it a lot quicker. There is the institutional distrust that is happening right now. So whether if it's with schooling systems, if it's with the government, if it's with corporations, anything like that, there's a distrust. And I want to say that kind of started a lot in the pandemic time frame. I noticed the last couple of years, like everyone is saying, I'm having a spiritual awakening. It's at the forefront. People are talking about it. Meditation is becoming mainstream. So with meditation, you're realizing this and you're going through this and you're saying, wow, this is so different. It is suggested that you do meditate, that you do quiet your brain, that you do become present, and however you do it. I mean, you could do guided meditations, you can do walking meditations, sometimes I just literally lay in the bed and take in the quiet before the chaos ensues when my son wakes up. But that to me is a form of meditation where I literally don't have a device in front of my face, and it is just me laying there feeling my body and letting whatever comes to mind come to mind. Meditation is not shutting off your mind. Meditation is hearing what is being said that needs to be said. When you meditate, you can meditate on a question. So you could say, can I get clarity on this? If you're meditating on it, you're going to get the answer. You're going to get the clarity. So do you see where I'm saying like your mind doesn't shut off? And just information and the access to the information that we have nowadays. So we're hearing so much more about spiritual awakening. Is it happening more than before? Hard to say. We just have a different way of going about finding out about it and hearing about it through the internet and the collective itself talking about it. And then of course we have the collective stress that pushes inward reflection. So everything that's going on in the world right now, we're all going inward and we're all reflecting. When outer structures shake, inner awareness starts to rise. And you see that right now with the way that the world is going and everything that has been in the news the last little bit. I can definitely see a lot more spiritual awakenings coming about, just because maybe people's minds have been really blown and the truth that they knew is no longer there. And it's going to start really having them ask the questions. And then next thing you know, there's the spiritual awakening that's going to happen. Awakening is escaping life. I want to state that. It is entering it consciously. So sometimes we don't really know that it's happening until we're like in the thick of it and we're like, whoa, but it's happening. It's just our soul, our spiritual self just knows, and we just start doing things differently. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, I want to eat cleaner. Yeah, I'm no longer talking to Billie Jean over there. And then you can look back on it 6 months. You're like, oh, I see this, and this, and this. And I had, 10 of the 25 signs of having a spiritual awakening. I must have had spiritual awakening. So integration, what it looks like is the nervous system is regulating. There's healthy boundaries, there's healing attachment wounds, there's parenting consciously, there's living simply. Those are all part of a spiritual awakening. And then the spiritual bypassing, not having an awakening, is basically escaping the pain. If you're not regulating your nervous system, if you're not kind of doing the healthy boundaries, if you're not healing attachment wounds, and maybe you're not parenting consciously because you don't have kids, living simply, that is part of the spiritual awakening. But you can do the bypassing, but it's just escaping the pain. You're not up-leveling yourself. You're keeping yourself kind of where you were. Integration is feeling, and it is staying grounded when you're doing it. To have a spiritual awakening, you're integrating all these different changes. Awakening is not about being special. I would say that for the most part, in my opinion, majority of the human population goes through spiritual awakening at least once in their lifetime, if not multiple times in their lifetime. It is about becoming real. It is not about transcending humanity. It is about embodying it. If you are in a dark night, you are not being punished. Just please, you're not being punished. You are evolving. And I know you're going through it. It's hard. If you don't know that it's happening, if you don't know what the dark night is, if you've never heard of it before and you're going through it, it is scary. It is a lot. You would feel like you're being punished, but you're not being punished. You are evolving. You are transcending. You're moving up. You're being refined. You are remembering. If you feel like you're going through a spiritual awakening as well, something that could really help you out, Reiki could help you. It would just help get your chakras back into balance as well. It would help with the calming part of it. It may help as well just with intuition being heightened. Some people have stated that when they've had Reiki, their intuition has increased as well. You could always look at getting Akashic records being read. That would definitely help you. You would understand kind of where your soul came in as in this lifetime. And what do you have written for yourself? Where do you want to go? What are your lessons in this lifetime? And you could put together the understanding that way as well. You could also do bars just to clear your mind. I had a podcast last week all about bars and how when you are needing to find who you truly are, bars is there and it can help you to defrag your mind and declutter it. And that might be something as well that you can look into. So there are different options that you can do as well. I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. It was so much fun doing it. Thank you so very much for being here today. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you so very much. If you like this podcast, if you know someone going through a spiritual awakening and you want to tell them a little bit about it, definitely share this podcast with other people. Like, rate, review, do all the things. I would appreciate that. You can go to my website, which is elevatedsoulhealing.com, and you can book in for Reiki or Akashic Records reading as well. And I do have one where I do both. If you do want to have a bar session, just message me and we can discuss doing a bar session as well. It's just not up on my website as of yet. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on my socials at Facebook and Instagram, Elevated Soul Healing. And then I do have my Facebook podcast page, which is Elevated. And then my Instagram podcast page is Elevated Pod. I will leave that information in the show notes for you. I'm so happy you're here. Like, thank you. My heart is so warm. Like, just thank you. This is such a great topic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.